another day to brew, baby. What is up, YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with the hometown commander. We are back for another episode of Millsy Brews, the show where I brew my version 1.0 deck list of the commander in front of us on my quest to out-brew your favorite Magic channel. I took a week off, needed some time to prep things for the channel, prep some new content for you guys that's going to be coming in the future, and get some ideas down, and I'm happy to say that you'll see more of that in the future. But let's wrap up Commander Masters. Let's do a few more commanders from Commander Masters, and then we'll do a few more random commanders on our way to Wilds of Eldraine when it comes out. This week we're going to be covering the last two of the Commander Masters precons, and we're going to start the week with Sliver Gravemother, a 5-color Sliver deck. Slivers weren't exactly a tribe that I ever expected to get a precon, but I think it makes a lot of sense. In a set where we saw the Eldrazi get a precon, it certainly seems like Slivers deserved a precon. I like Sliver Gravemother, and we'll read it, and then we'll talk about my opinion on Slivers and how we should upgrade the deck. But it says, Legend rule doesn't apply to Slivers you control, and each Sliver card in your graveyard has Encore X, where X is its mana value. Encore says you pay that, exile this card, and for each opponent, create a token copy that attacks that opponent this turn if able. They gain haste, sacrifice at the beginning of the end step, activate only as a sorcery. So the big thing with Sliver Gravemother here, with giving our Slivers the legend rule not applying, is that if we had any legendary creatures in our legendary Slivers in our graveyard, we could still encore them and get a copy for all of our opponents. Okay, so Slivers are a fun tribe because the whole point is every Sliver gives an ability to all of your Slivers. Most of the best Slivers give haste, lifelink, double strike, first strike, flying, can't be blocked, abilities like that. So all of our best Slivers are giving these great abilities to all of our Slivers. But there's a couple other commander choices for Slivers. And I won't bury the lead. On Thursday, I'm going to be covering the first Sliver as my choice for probably a Sliver commander. But what I want to do is go from the avenue of the precon, and then in another video we'll talk about which one I like the best. But your other choices really for 5-color Slivers are Sliver Hive Lord, 5 mana. All of them have indestructible. Sliver Legion, all Sliver creatures get +1/+1 for each other Sliver on the battlefield. And then the first Sliver, which has Cascade, and Slivers we control have Cascade. I like the first Sliver more because I think Cascade's a very important ability, and it cascades out of the command zone. But we will talk about that on Thursday. I believe the only other thing I'm missing is, I think, Sliver Queen. But again, we wanted to still make this upgrade to the precon somewhat budget conscious. Although our 5-color Slivers are certainly not doing that on their own and are a lot of the cost of the deck. But let's start down on the mana base, and this is where I add a little bit of money. We're playing all 10 of the triomes. We're not playing any fetches. We're actually just going to play all of our check lands and then all of our filter lands. I think what this is going to do is allow us to get ideally a triome down on turn 1 or 2, get our check lands to almost always be coming in untapped, and then our filter lands can help filter from there. We're also playing things like City of Brass, Unclaimed Territory, these lands that are going to end up tapping for any color for us. Exotic Orchard should be able to put in great work for us, tapping for anything. Is this the best 5-color mana base? No. Strip out the filter lands, throw in the shock lands, or throw in the fetch lands, and I feel like you probably have a pretty good 5-color mana base that's going to do well for you, or a 5-color mana base I think I'd like a little bit more. But again, I want to try to keep it somewhat budget conscious, even though obviously we're starting with a pretty expensive precon as it is. As far as the enchantments go, I think Descendant Sphere is such a good new enchantment for this deck. It says whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, we can sacrifice one of them. If we do, reveal cards on the top of your library until you reveal a creature card that shares a creature type with it. Put that card on the battlefield and the rest on the bottom. Descendant Sphere is going to play it in a lot of tribal decks, and I think it deserves to be. It's a great card, and I want to slam it in every other tribal deck I have. But it's going to do a lot of good in here because a cheapy Sliver that we don't really care about could potentially get recycled into a better one. Descendant's Path is going to let us look at the top card of our library, and if it's a Sliver, we can cast it for free, or we can put it on the bottom. I think this is a good card. It can help us get some Slivers in the battlefield for free. And like I said, when every Sliver coming down gives our Slivers more abilities, I think we want to get as many Slivers down as we can. Elven Chorus seems like a fun card for a deck like this. all of our creatures tap for a mana of any color, and we can cast creature spells from the top, which is just going to help extend our hand. Etchings of a Chosen is probably a card that you're not going to see a ton in a deck like this, but it's a card I have a lot of love for. So it comes in, we're going to pick a type, obviously Slivers. All of them get +1/+1, but then for 1 and sacrificing a creature of the chosen type, we can give creature we control indestructible in a turn. I like this because if we can keep a couple mana up, or if we can already tap our creatures for mana with not only Elven Cores, but we have a couple creatures that allow all our Slivers to do that, we could potentially give some creatures indestructible and protect our really important Slivers. And with our commander, if we can protect it on our next turn, we could encore Slivers back if need be. Mirari's Wake, one of my single favorite cards as far as mana ramp goes. It allows your lands to tap for double or just another one of what it already produced. This can be great for casting a couple more creature spells in one turn, and it also just gives that flat +1/+1 to everybody. And then Rhythm of the Wild going to give our Slivers haste if we want when they come down, or if we already have haste, can give all of them +1/+1 coming in, and it prevents them from being countered, which is huge, I think, for our commander. And for our other really important Slivers, them not being able to be countered is just going to be killer. All right, getting into the artifacts, I did my best to just, we're eventually going to want to ramp and get as much as we can. So Arcane Signet, the Lantern, which will open up our lands to tap for any color. Commander Sphere and Decanter both get us any color because we're playing 5 colors. Decanter stops us from having a hand size. Felwar Stone, just like Exotic Orchard, is going to end up getting most of our colors, depending on what our opponents are playing. And then the Soul Ring, of course, because we are playing Commander. Herald's Horn seems pretty good. Most of our Slivers cost colored mana and at least 1 colorless mana, so this is going to drop them down that 1 colorless mana. Then we potentially get an extra Sliver into our hand at the start of the upkeep. Pyre of Heroes just seems right for a deck like this. We're playing a deck that every creature in our deck shares a type, so Pyre of Heroes can take a small Sliver and run it up the chain. I think Pyre of Heroes feels the best if we can take a 4-mana Sliver and turn it into a Sliver Overlord or a first Sliver, that kind of thing. I think that's where Pyre of Heroes will probably shine the most, but I think otherwise it's just going to help us go up the chain. And then Vanquisher's Banner. I think it's actually already in the deck, but just +1/+1 and then draw a card. Oh, we cast a Sliver. The cool part is it's not on ETB, it's on cast, so it's kind of good in the sense that we're going to get the card either way. It's kind of bad because if it was ETB, then we could take advantage of Sliver Overlords, Sliver Godmother's Encore ability and get cards that way. But there's other ways we could do that. We could play Elemental Bond. We could play things like that. But I think the Vank Banner is going to be good. I really wanted to junk this for like a Coat of Arms. I still feel like Coat of Arms is probably a better card. It's just going to make our Slivers hit harder no matter what's on the battlefield. But that's maybe something we could change in the future. Getting into the spells, only playing a couple sorceries, and most of them are ramp. We want some of the ramp if we can have it. Dropped into Patriarch's Bidding, just because it's a way where we can get a bunch of our Slivers back and hopefully hurt our opponents down the line. As far as an instance, 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of removal. We want a lot of pieces of removal, and I picked some of the better removal we can that could hit more things and Anguish to Making the Assassin Trophy. Eldon Recall is a great tutor for some creatures if we want a specific one. If we really want the first Sliver, if we really want a specific Sliver, we can get it that way. For the Ancestors seems interesting. Choose creature type, look at the top 6. You could put any number of them into your hand. The rest under the bottom. This is great because we can fill our hand with a bunch of Slivers, and then we can flash it back again to get a bunch of Slivers into our hand. Of course, the more mana we have, the more Slivers we can cast, right? So that becomes good. Growth Spiral for a little bit more ramp. That's a card I really love, and it can help out. And then a Heroic Intervention for some protection. Before we get into the block of Slivers, let's talk about the one Planeswalker I'm choosing to run. And I'm only choosing to do Wrenn because it's kind of another copy of Chromatic Lantern in our deck, giving our lands the ability to tap for any color. The +1 lets a land become a 3/3, and it can attack. The -2 lets us mill and put a permanent among the back of our hand. But the -7 says we can play lands and cast permanent spells from our graveyard. That's not bad if we want to not encore our Slivers and just get them straight back. We could do that. Again, I just like Wrenn because the add of mana of any color, this is already a Chromatic Lantern in its own. And then the +1 will just help us with attackers if need be. We're going to get into the slivers, but if you're not interested in seeing all the slivers that I've chosen and what they specifically do, because again, like I said before, every sliver just adds something to the rest of the slivers. The deck list is going to be down in the description. Please let me know what you think of the slivers, but let's go through. I will try to point out when I can remember if this is a new sliver or not. As someone who doesn't play sliver decks, I'm not going to know all of them, but I think I have most of them picked out. I know the first one is Bone Slave Sliver. I do believe is a new one. It says Sliver creatures you control have double strike. So every Sliver, including itself, has double strike. Brood Sliver. Whenever a Sliver deals combat damage to a player, its controller may create a 1/1 Sliver token. This is great because then you're getting more creatures with all of the abilities that you have, and I believe that's a new one. Cloud Shredder Sliver. Sliver creatures you control have flying and haste. I don't think this is a new one, but I could be wrong. I know I'm assuming all of the new ones are rares in the deck, but I could be wrong. But again, very good. Flying and haste is kind of two of the best abilities we can have, especially once they get a little bit bigger. Crypt Sliver. All slivers have tap, regenerate target sliver. Regenerate's a very odd mechanic. You can read the reminder text there. I just think this is a good thing to have around just in case we get a board wipe and we can all save if we have an Eve, right? If no matter how many slivers we have, they can all just protect each other as long as they have haste. And we have a couple slivers that give haste, so we should always kind of be able to do this. And we do have a couple of them that give vigilance, so we could potentially attack and still be able to use this ability. Diffusion Sliver, whenever a sliver we control becomes the target of a spell or ability, counter that spell unless its controller pays 2, so kind of a word 2 type effect, which is good. It's going to be a good thing for all of our slivers. Firewake Sliver, all slivers have haste, that's great. And then all slivers have 1, sacrifice this creature, target's creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So we can do some buffing potentially. This is great if we want to sacrifice these tokens to buff up our other creatures. Fungus Sliver. All slivers have, whenever this creature is dealt damage, put a counter on it. This is pretty great for attacking because if we're bigger than our opponent's creatures that are blocking, we're going to kind of grow in the process. Gale Rider Sliver is pretty great. Slivers have flying for just 1 mana. This is going to help us out, and this is definitely, I believe, one of the new ones. Gemhide Sliver gives us that Elven Chorus type ability. It says all slivers have tap, add 1 mana, make color. I wanted to play Cryptolith right as well, but I realized there's a couple slivers that already do this, so why not just take advantage of the slivers that do it? Harmonic Sliver is basically our copy of Aura Shards. Whenever this permanent enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment. All slivers have that. And if you've never played against an Aura Shards or a Rex Sage type effect, it's going to do a very good job at either killing your enchantments or killing your artifacts, which is going to hurt a lot of decks. Hatchery Spider, which I believe is one of the new ones, gives all of our slivers replicate, and the replicate cost is its mana cost, so the more amount of times we replicate, the more copies of it we get. And almost all of our slivers in this deck are non-legendary, except the few ones we talked about. So then that's great, because for something like one of the ones that gives this effect or that buffs, we're just getting extra copies, right? For effects like this, where that happens when something comes in, we're now just getting multiple copies of that effect. Heart Sliver just gives everything haste, which is pretty great. Hibernation Sliver, all slivers have pay 2 life, return this permanent to its owner's hand. I think this is a really good ability because it can kind of protect us in a lot of ways. Let's see someone board wipes and we really don't want to lose a couple slivers, or we want to protect our commander. We can pay 2 life, return it to our hand, and then play it the next turn and keep it safe without incurring the penalty. Or we could always, let's say if we needed to get an effect off something entering the battlefield, we could do that. Horn Sliver, one of the more popular ones. All slivers gain trample, and that's pretty great, especially when we have a couple of slivers that buff our team. Last Step Sliver is one of the new ones. Slivers you control have Afflict 2. So it says whenever a creature with Afflict 2 becomes blocked, defending player loses 2 life, and that's going to be pretty important, especially considering we're going to be trying to attack right in the game. And it says whenever a non-token sliver you control dies, amass slivers 2. So we get an army that's a sliver, and so kind of like amass zombies or amass orcs, we just amass slivers 2, and then that's pretty good as well. And the Afflict, I think, will help us a lot. Manawef Sliver, same thing, add a mana of any color. Necrotic Sliver, all slivers have 3, sacrifice this permanent, destroy target permanent. So instead of having the Aura Shards effect, now we kind of have this now we kind of have this effect of being able to sacrifice something to destroy something else. There's a bunch of cards like the Seals, for example, that have this type of ability. Predatory Sliver, everybody gets a flat +1/+1. Realm Walker lets us look at the top card of our library and cast Slivers on the top of our library. Regal Sliver, one of the other new ones. Slivers get, when this creature enters the battlefield, Slivers you control get +1/+1 until end of turn if you're the monarch, otherwise you become the monarch. So this is pretty good because the more Slivers we play in a turn, potentially the more we could buff the board. Sentinel Sliver giving us all the vigilance. Shifting Sliver making us all unblockable except by Slivers. That's going to more or less be unblockable for us in any matchup. Sinew Sliver just giving a flat +1/+1. Again, I think these flat +1/+1s are still important because the wider we go, the better it's going to be. We talked about our 5-color Sliver, Spiteful Sliver. Whenever this creature is dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target player or planeswalker. This is great because then if they block, we just deal the damage to them anyway. And then hopefully we still keep our attacker in the combat. Striking Sliver, everybody gets first strike. Synapse Sliver, I believe, is one of the new ones. Whenever a Sliver deals combat damage to a player, we may draw a card. That's pretty great. So this is kind of like a reconnaissance mission type effect, but it's going to have all of them are going to have it. Siphon Sliver, everybody gets lifelink. I believe this is a new one as well. Tempered Sliver. They all have when this creature deals combat damage to a player, put a counter on it. Well, that's pretty great. Two-headed Sliver, everybody gets Menace. Venom Sliver, everybody gets Death Touch. Virulent Sliver, everybody gets Poisonous 1. Which is kind of like Toxic, is more or less basically, it's not, but it basically is. It's more like Toxic, where when you deal combat damage to a player, that player gets a poison counter. This is going to be pretty good the wider we go. And then the Wing Sliver, everybody gets Flying. So as you can see, all of our Slivers are just trying to build our board up and get ourselves as many abilities as we can so we can just knock in and hurt our opponents. I'll be honest, I personally have no want to build a Slivers deck. I think Slivers are an interesting type of creature, and they're fun to play against. They're a tough deck because you eventually have to start figuring out which is the most important Sliver to deal with. And the one thing I've always respected about Slivers is specifically stuff like Legion and First Sliver just become hard to deal with on their own. Yes, you can get rid of them, but have they built up enough value outside of them to make the game better for them? You know, First Sliver is the most popular one on Arena because it's the one that's there. But I like Sliver Legion too. I think that kind of coat of arms effect for all of your Slivers is really important. And then of course Sliver High Lord giving everything indestructible is pretty important. So these 5-color Slivers become some of your most important creatures because they generate so much value. But let me know what you think of the Sliver deck down in the description. Like I said, Thursday we are going to be looking at the first Sliver. I've changed the deck just a little bit to take more advantage of the Cascades. So if you're interested in hearing about that, that'll be on Thursday. And then on Friday we're looking at Guff, we're looking at Planeswalker Party, and what I'm going to do with that precon. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.